This is the Rank Amateur Podcast, number 9.
Hey there, this is the Rank Amateur Podcast. It's good to be back. My co-host and friend is Ben Wyatt, and my name is John Kearns. Ben, how's it going this week?
It's going pretty well, John. Can't complain. How about yourself?
Not too bad. It is a hectic time in all the good ways and sometimes all the frustrating ways, but I am happy to report, and we'll do more of a download on this later, but I was able to, and maybe you too, were able to get into the woods for the first time this year. So that was good, man. That was a really great weekend. You and I and our wives got a chance to spend a couple of days camped out by a river, and really couldn't have come at a better time for all the reasons, right? Your psyche, the stress, all of it seemed to come melting away for about 48 hours there. And again, we'll do a full download on that on a future episode. But that's kind of the highlight of what's been happening with me since we last spoke.
Yeah, it was real. It was it was real cathartic to get in the woods and just no cell phone coverage. Disconnect and take some time for ourselves. And so yeah, and I think that helps us shift gears a bit. I know the whirlwind is picking up, and a couple of things are going on our end, right? So golf season is upon us. So I know that might be a little hard to swallow on your end as you're working through recovery, but we're looking forward to having you back out there.
Thank you.
But we are, we're getting into the season. We've had a couple of rounds. The game's coming together. We're hitting them straight for the most part. But kind of on, shifting gears a little bit, my wife and I have been, and I think, we've been on the hunt for some investment properties, and it's been quite a long search. And I unfortunately report to say we have yet to find anything noteworthy. We've gotten close. I think I've sent you a couple of properties that we're looking at, but boy, I'll tell you what, it's, the prices of everything is going up, and the interest rates are not helping.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what's been going on our side, right? Just trying to swing the stick and look for ways to break out of the corporate rat race where we can.
Yeah, I hear that. Look, man, in real estate, there's a reason the sales and the buy cycle are very slow. There's a lot of moving parts, and I know you've shared some of the links and some of your thoughts on this, and I'm excited for you. I've been able to buy and sell a property or two in my life, and it's a fun process, even if it's not completely without stress. But it's also can be pretty satisfying. So it's fun watching you guys go through it, and I have a feeling you're going to find just the right thing soon enough and understand what you're getting in on and why and everything else. And then of course the real fun begins. So good on both of you and Megan on that, man. That's very, very cool. Um, the only other thing kind of going on our end is we have a major house project going on over here, and we ran into some issues with zoning. And so we've got all of that fun to look forward to, and going before boards and talking about variances and easements and setbacks and all of the rest of that joy. So that's kind of top of our mind, whether we whether we like it or not right now. And hopefully here in about 30 days we'll have moved through it, and we'll be digging the yard a little bit. But that's really what's been capturing my attention. Like I said, with the exception of a couple of weekends ago when we were able to get rid of all of it and go sleep by the river and stand in the river and chase the elusive trout for a bit. But again, we'll talk more about that in a future episode. But for now, let's preview what we've got coming up, because we have a really, really special episode of the podcast. In fact, I would even call it a landmark episode. And in fact, we had a conversation not long ago that was so much fun. It was just so successful that we've decided to break it down into 2 episodes. But Ben, you and I had the chance about a week and a half ago to talk to none other than Brian Fleshing of Mad River Outfitters. Look, if you have ever Googled fly fishing basics, fly fishing gear, fly fishing lessons, fly fishing primer, getting started in fly fishing, if you've ever taken to YouTube in search of any of those queries, you have come across Brian Fleshing. And we were lucky enough to strike up a really great conversation with him. Um, Real quick, Ben, the quick takeaways. How did that conversation leave you?
Well, for me personally, I mean, when you're speaking to someone that thoroughly understands the subject matter it shows, and I find it hard pressed to believe. I mean, I get it. There's a lot of knowledgeable folks out there, but this guy oozes fly fishing. He knows what he's talking about. He helped me through, and I think you'll hear in the dialogue kind of getting started what I needed and whatnot. He's got a lot of content on YouTube. As far as I know, he's the largest fly fishing dedicated channel. So we're very fortunate to have somebody take the time to share with a couple of rank amateurs the do's and the don'ts and how to get started. So I'm just thoroughly impressed. I don't know how else to put it. It's we're very fortunate for this conversation, and I think the conversation's jam packed full of information that can help anyone who may be interested in listening.
All of those things are absolutely true. And I will just offer that, Brian was just so gracious with his time. And my major takeaway was just the passion that just oozed out of everything he said. And so let's let that serve as a teaser for now. You're going to get to hear the first part of that conversation, and then we'll follow up with the second part soon thereafter. But for now, Ben, in the last week or so, what have we learned?
Yeah. So, John, shame on you, but you've kind of gotten me down the rabbit hole of mechanical watches,
Mm.
right? So I've now spent well more money than I'd like to admit on some really sought after timepieces, and I had been hunting for that kind of beater watch, right? So I've kind of gone mid tier dive watch. I'm actually wearing the Omega Seamaster right now on a NATO strap. Love it. Um, I've been fortunate enough to get my hands on a couple, or at least one other really nice timepiece. But I need something that can kind of handle the farm, handle the working on the car or doing yard work. And so I started down the rabbit hole, right? And I think when you get into that, we'll call it sub $500 range, but you still want to be in a mechanical or an automatic watch. There's several options, but you've gotten me addicted to kind of a watch that has some story, some character, something that isn't just something you can go grab from the middle of the mall. And that's what brings me to what I've learned, and I've kind of landed and found a company by the name of and forgive my pronunciation, but Zajani Watches. I don't know if I'm saying that
Is
correctly,
it,
but
is
it's
it
going to be
Yanni, perhaps? Yeah. Okay.
yeah. So ZJANI
Yep.
Watches, and this company is really focusing on the Seiko mod, which
Yeah.
is a whole thing. It's a whole cult following, but Seiko makes great watches. They make great movements, somewhat bulletproof, you might say. And what really struck me about this particular company is that they do a lot of homage mods.
Yeah.
There's a Rolex esque Rolex from a glance or from a distance kind of designs, and for an affordable price, right? So you're getting an automatic watch, so you're not having to go, slumming into quartz. No offense to quartz, but you don't have a battery,
Yep.
and you're able to get a very similar look to oftentimes a five or even in some instances 6-digit watch, depending on the colorway, and you're able to get that anywhere from 300 to 500 buck range, and specifically, I've been looking at the Submariner. Um, it's a mill sub. It's a
Yep.
it's a it's a older homage, if you will, but classic look. And looking at that in the $300 to $500 price range, well, now we're talking about a watch that, hey, if you get a scratch on, you get a scuff on, it's not that big a deal, but it still looks good, gives you that look of that higher
Yep.
end watch, and it's a conversation starter. So um, several options on their website. We'll throw up some visuals, but they're doing everything from Submariner to GMT
Yep.
style replica. Not I won't say replica. They're not replicas, but they're homages. How many times can I say the word homage, right? But and really, I'm don't quite know which one I want, but I know I want one of them, and that's where I've what I've learned this past week is, yeah, I gotta get one of these watches.
Yeah. Well, man, you said a whole lot just then, and I could take any number of different things you said and go down all the rabbit holes. There's a lot to comment on. I'm going to try and resist the temptation to do that in the interest of time. Two thoughts come to mind. I think this is cool. Seiko, whether it be stock or modded, uh, could be argued, one of the most important watch companies in the world, one of the most popular watch companies in the world. It's always cool to have a Seiko. I like this modding thing, um, and I think you're on the right one. The mill sub replica is just too cool not to be drawn to it and select that one. Um, so this is all really great. I do remember a conversation you and I had about this because you were in search of this beater, if you will, or the grab and go, the one you didn't have to worry too much about, didn't have to be stressed about out in the yard or in the woods or whatever. And it's always good to have one of those so that you can be comfortable out there in the elements and not worry about this thing on your wrist at the price of a automobile. So
Sure.
it's good. It's good you're going this direction. And you had asked me about field watches, and I have a field watch that I really love. I'm very fond of. It's the Hamilton Field Khaki. It's a classic, and
Hmm.
I love it. But the advice that I gave to you was for your beater, your field watch, whatever you want to call it. Go with a dive watch because you get that element of water resistance, and they're sturdy. They're sturdy pieces. So I think you're on the right track. I wouldn't trade my field khaki, but if I was going down the process anew, I would probably think in the realm of affordable dive watch for this application here. So I think you're going at it a fun way. You're going at it an affordable way. Just looking at this mill sub, this is a $299 watch. Can't beat that. It's going to have an older Seiko movement. Probably going to have to set it every 2 or 3 days, even if you're wearing it a lot. But who cares, right? These are mechanical watches. I mean, we don't need the atomic timekeeping of the Garmin all the time. So, yeah, man, really cool suggestion. These are outrageously cool watches, and I think when you finally pull the trigger, you're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, and in the interest of time, I'll be short. But as I'm looking at a lot of options, new and old or modded, if you will, I think a lot of Seiko mods that are out there, they're a little apprehensive to give you the water rating. And
Hmm.
if you look at this particular outlet, Zajani watches, if you will, we're looking at 200 meters, 20 atom plus. A lot of times with a Seiko mod, it's going to be 10
Yep.
atom or less. And you're also getting you. So the 299 one is with the acrylic glass. If you go up just a couple of dollars, you're around. You get this. You get the sapphire crystal,
Yeah.
and a lot of times that's going to, sapphire and a lot of this stuff that's going to jump you up into the $500 range quickly. At that point, Hamilton is the king, and so if I can save a couple of dollars, this is kind of where I've ended up. But that is enough about these watches. We'll talk more if I actually buy one, and then we can talk about it.
Yep.
My take on it. What have you learned this week?
Yeah. So I want to point to a YouTube video from the Collecting Cars or Collecting Addicts channel. So I stumbled upon the Collecting Cars podcast a little over a year ago, perhaps. Can't exactly remember, but I'm a big fan. And in fact, I'd go so far as to say that the existence of that podcast and the existence of this podcast are not entirely unrelated. But they also have a YouTube channel, and sort of the primary host of the Collecting Cars podcast is Chris Harris of Top Gear fame. And so Top Gear is no longer a thing, but he continues to make this video content. Now he does it for the auction website Collecting Cars, as well as the Collecting Cars, Collecting Addicts podcast. So that's a long way of telling you have to check out this video called The Rally with No Name. And this basically is the documentary of a 2-hour race that it takes, I believe, Norway. But basically, this weekend looks like about the most fun you can have with your clothes on, probably. It just looks like an absolute blast. So here's the event. This is called the Tuttle Porsche Invitational Event, the Rally with No Name. So basically, I stand corrected. This event takes place in Sweden, and Tuttle is a British Porsche 911 resto mod company. And so they take their vintage resto mods and take them up there into the ice and snow and have a rally race. And it just looks like a screaming blast. And so just to watch it, you just kind of giggle with looking at how much fun they're having. And of course, you get green with envy, and you get jealous because you want to go out there and take part next year. Probably not going to be accessible for me in the next year or so, but nevertheless, I can dream. But you've got to check out Chris Harris Drives The Rally with No Name, and make sure you watch to the end because it has a very interesting ending that maybe you wouldn't have expected.
Yeah, I think I think you got me on to Collecting Cars, and these guys have a great time, and they really know their stuff. Again, that's kind of the fuel of the podcast, right? Can we find who knows enough to teach us just enough to have enough fun, right?
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned this being you said New Zealand,
No, I'm sorry. It's in Sweden.
Sweden.
Yep.
Okay, so are we talking snow here? I mean, is
Oh,
this?
snow. It is just a white snow and ice tundra. And we are taking very expensive resto modded 911s in a frankly, a fairly irresponsible way, and just absolutely wringing them out for 2 days straight.
Okay, so just with the tidbits you're giving me, this ain't for everybody. This is this is for a select few. But is there a qualification? Is this an open invitational? I mean, how do you participate in something like
Yeah, I
this?
mean it's billed as an invitational. I believe, and I could be wrong about this because this is not my community, but I believe that this is an invitational for customers of Tuttle 911 resto mods.
Okay, okay. So you
So
got to
you can
spend a
start
little
there.
coin.
Yeah, you can start there. First of all, buy a Tuttle, and then see if you can get on the list.
So this is maybe an aspiration. This is we're hoping to get there at some point. right.
Yeah, something like that. That's
Uh,
fair.
okay. Well, so I guess without giving away any of the goods, how long's the video? Why should somebody watch till the end? You touched on it, but I think there's a lot in that video. If you could just maybe give some highlights.
This is about a 21, let's say 21 minutes, 19 seconds. And I'm just sort of looking really quick at a couple of the images. It looks like we have about 10 or 12 911s that are participating. And of course, it's a rally course. So you have a driver and a navigator in each vehicle. Um, and again, I will tell you, wait to the end because it's a nail biter, and the ending is pretty interesting. And of course, it's presented by Chris Harris, who is just a world class wit and television presenter, now podcast host. Also, a great author. I read his book. I'll probably recommend that in a future episode. But he put out a book at the end of last year, I believe. It's really great. But we'll save that. But Chris Harris driving this beautiful, very expensive, vintage, modded Porsche 911 around Sweden for a couple days it's good TV.
Very well. Very well. Well, John, I know that none of this, very little of this, would be possible without our sponsor, Hop Passports. Do we have an update on the winner of the
Yeah,
Hop Pass?
so Upper Peninsula Brewing won is the national championship this year from the upper part of Michigan. So March Brusanity, as I understand it from the team at Hot Passport, was just an absolute smashing success this year. Higher participation than ever from both the brewery perspective and then also the beer lovers who voted on these various breweries. And what is so cool about this event that they put on is it really kind of proves the concept of Hot Passport, which is that breweries belong everywhere, and they're wonderful third places and gathering spaces for people of all stripes, right? And this, it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what your status is, how much money you got, whatever. Everybody belongs, at a brewery and as a part of a brewery community, and you don't have to live in a city. So what's really interesting is many of the breweries who have done so well over the years in March Brew Sanity, these places are in rural outposts, right? One of the finalists this year is from a really tiny town called Manchester, Tennessee, who
Okay.
whose only claim to fame is it happens to be the home of a fairly prominent music festival. Other than that, it's basically two interstate exits. And also, it's the home of this brewery who was a semifinalist in March Brew Sanity for the last couple of years. So, and then of course, Upper Peninsula Brewing from Michigan wins the whole thing, takes the prize this year. And so kudos to their team. I know they're thrilled about the national championship, and they've been getting a lot of press, and they've been on the local news and whatnot. So, really great thing for Upper Peninsula Brewing. Another smashing success in the March Brew Sanity event for Hot Passport. So, congratulations to both of those teams, and don't forget that Hot Passport is the company that believes that you should drink local, and the locals wherever you are. Ben, let's get into the interview. How's that sound?
I think we've kept the people waiting long enough.
Yeah.
Let's give them the goods.
Yeah. So look, again, Brian Fleshing of Mad River Outfitters, which is a fly fishing shop in Columbus, Ohio. And but it's really so much more than that at this point. Brian has really staked his claim as one of the leading expert voices of fly fishing on YouTube and really anywhere on the internet. So we are so thrilled to have him on our humble little podcast. So I guess without further ado, here is Brian Fleshing of Mad River Outfitters. Brian, how is it this Friday?
Going very well. The sun is shining, starting to warm up a little bit. Business is booming. People are thinking about getting out fishing. So life's good. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's very much the same here. We actually woke up to cold weather this morning, but it's good and toasty now. And Ben and I are actually about to head to the mountains to do some fly fishing. And that
That's
brings
what we
us
heard.
to
Yeah.
our discussion. Brian, why don't we start by you just introducing yourself very briefly and tell us, how did fly fishing find you?
Well, again, we started Mad River Outfitters back in 1994, believe it or not. So December 1st will be 30 years old, which is hard to believe. I think I must have been about 4 years old, I guess, when we started, um, or somewhere in that ballpark. Um, how did fly fishing find me? Well, I grew up with it. I caught my first fish on a fly when I was 7 years old. My father, both of my grandfathers dabbled in it. My dad fly fished when he was in his teens and 20s. I also have an uncle who I'm very close with, who actually lived with my family for a number of years. So I've always been surrounded by it. Did it when I was younger, started Titan flies. And then, high school came about. I got into girls and cars and playing music and getting in trouble. But then I probably got back to it when I was in my late teens, 17, 18 or so. And by the time I was 19, I was asked to become a fly fishing guide for a shop in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I quickly became the manager of that store. And about 4.5 years after that, I kind of saw that this is something I maybe want to do to try to make a living. Columbus, Ohio was kind of a wide open market. I moved to Columbus in 1994 and started Mad River Outfitters, and we've been doing it ever since. So,
All right. Excellent. So let's get to the topic du jour. So we have sort of challenged you to load Ben up with his starter kit for fly fishing, and a couple of
yeah,
parameters we want to be aware of. We have asked you to sort of be a little bit cost conscious, but we don't have to come in at the absolute bottom dollar. We want to make sure he has a good
mhm.
time. We want to make sure that he has good equipment that's going to last him. So, with that, let's talk about Ben's beginner fly fishing kit. And Ben, I'll just turn it on over to you.
Sure.
Yeah. Again, thanks for taking some time here, Brian, because I was in the dark. I had no idea what I was doing. So I'd been following your channel for a while and was like, okay, this guy might be able to point me in the right direction. And I appreciate you taking the time to work with me. I know we spoke on the phone a few times.
Hmm.
So, I really didn't know what I didn't know, but I knew I needed certain things. So if I recall correctly, we started with the waiters. And can you just kind of walk me through, because obviously there's a couple different price points. I think we landed in the middle,
Hmm.
but give us an idea of why we went there, and maybe why we wanted to go up a step, and maybe what we might be lacking, or what we might want down the road from the higher step.
Sure. Sure. Well, first and foremost, if you kind of go back through, just to give some background, we have on our YouTube channel, without sounding like I'm bragging, I think we're up to almost 250,000 subscribers now on the YouTube channel. I think as you look around, that there's nobody in my industry that has that many subscribers. So I guess you could say we are the most popular YouTube channel. In fact, I'm sitting kind of in one of our studios that we use right now. But back in about 2017, 2018, we really saw a need for putting together a full blown series, which we called Getting Started in Fly Fishing. And this is a class that I've been teaching here at the shop for almost 30 years now. But we put it into a YouTube format, spiced it up a little bit, chopped it up into 14 different episodes. And of course, when the pandemic hit, I mean, everybody sat at home, wanted to learn to fly fish, and found our videos. So some of those videos have millions of views, which we're very proud of. And we're happy to have helped so many people get started in the sport and what we think is get started properly. Um, but to go back starting with waders. Waders aren't necessarily something that every fly fisher has to invest in. For example, I don't wear waders very often. I avoid them at all costs. I fish out of boats primarily. I do a lot of my fishing in saltwater, so I'm in a boat. I do a lot of bass fishing. When I do fish for trout and steelhead here in Ohio, I prefer to be in a boat. So very rarely am I in waders. But in your case, for what you guys came to me and said, here's what we're doing. We want to get outfitted for this. So you're going to be wading in the stream. So obviously a pair of waders was needed for you. But I just wanted to preface that and say that not everybody has to own a pair of waders in order to get started fly fishing. Just like a lot of people think that instantly, soon if you fly fish, you have to have a fly fishing vest. Well, you don't have to have a fly fishing vest. I think I said to you the other day that, the good Lord gave us pockets in our pants where you can keep stuff.
That's right.
But eventually you're going to find yourself with more gimmicks and gadgets and nippers and hemostats and solutions that you're going to carry with you. So they make all kinds of different contraptions, vests and chest packs and slings and what have you. But it's an option, just like waders are an option. But to get back and answer your question, waders, all waders do the exact same things. No matter whether you spend $100 or you spend $900 on a pair of waders, which, believe it or not, you can, they're all going to keep you dry. And in today's day and age, they're all made out of a breathable membrane, which you guys know from being in the outdoor. You guys are familiar with the outdoor stuff. When you're talking about rain gear or hiking gear, it's all made out of Gore-Tex or a similar, what we call a laminate breathable material. So the way I always describe it to folks is, first and foremost, if I sell you a pair of waders, or you buy a pair of waders, you buy them from Matt River Outfitters or wherever, I guarantee you, I'll put this in writing, those waders will leak. They're going to.
Okay.
Yep, they're going to leak. So the best way to look at it is, the more money you spend is probably going to ensure you that it takes longer for that to happen, for them to leak. Let's say if you spend $100, $150 on a pair of breathable waders, if you fish an average amount, that's probably a 1 to 2 year investment. If you spend, say, $200 to $400, that's probably going to be a 4 to 5 year investment. And if you spend, $600 or plus on a pair of waders, you're probably going to get maybe 6, 7, 8 years out of them. That's I think the easiest and simplest way to take a look at the cost of waders. And I think it pretty much holds true. We see that, a $300 laminate imported pair of waders for the average angler, that's going to be a 3 or 4 year investment. Whereas if you buy a true Gore-Tex, and I used to kind of poo-poo the whole Gore-Tex idea, but there is something to Gore-Tex. Gore-Tex is a superior breathable membrane. It breathes better, which in turn keeps you more comfortable. And also, you're going to look at a product that's made in the United States as opposed to being imported. And as we all know, with anything from fly rods, in my business, fly rods, fly reels, waders, anytime you have something made in the U.S., it's just going to be more expensive. We know that. That's just how it is. And then the second thing is there is going to be comfort. And by that, I mean several things. In a more expensive pair of waders, it's going to be much more form fitted, and you're going to have much more size options. You're going to have articulated knees. You're going to have more proportionate, and you climb into $400 or $500 pair of waders, and you can instantly tell the moment you put them on that they just fit better and they feel better. Whereas you go to $100, $150 pair of waders, they offer them in small, medium, large, extra large. Whereas the wader you got, which was really a middle of the road product, although kind of pushing more of a high end pair of waders, you have medium long, you have medium short, you have medium king. So they can fit you a little bit better, and you don't wind up looking like you're wearing a trash bag around you that's baggy here and too tight here. And then different breathable membranes, because they're different qualities. A breathable wader is going to keep you cooler in the summer, and it's going to keep you warmer in the winter because it allows that moisture vapor to breathe out. So in the summertime, it allows your sweat to evaporate and move through the membrane. In the wintertime, it does the same thing because you get cold because you trap moisture next to your skin and you wind up getting cold. Again, same thing if you're hiking, same thing if you're hunting. It's all about moving that moisture vapor away from your skin and through that membrane. And the more money you spend on a higher quality membrane like a Gore-Tex product, you're going to just have better fit and you're going to have better performance out of that membrane itself. So it's really two things that you're paying for with a pair of waders. I know a lot of people, when they first get into the sport, they look at let's just say Simms. Simms is kind of the king of waders. They are made in Bozeman, Montana. At least they're higher priced Gore-Tex products. And a lot of people say, oh my God, $600 for a pair of waders. Well, keep in mind that that's probably going to last you 6, 8, maybe 10 years. And you're just going to be that much more comfortable. We all know, no matter what you're doing, again, hiking, hunting, camping, if you're not comfortable, you're not having fun out there in the great outdoors. So, it's durability. How long are they going to last? And then last but not least, what kind of service are you going to get when that happens? When they start to leak, who is going to take care of you? And in your case, Ben, you've got me and Mad River Outfitters, and you also have Simms, who offers excellent customer service. When those waders leak, we're going to back you up. They have a great guarantee. If they leak this weekend or the first time you go out, we can hand you a new pair over the counter. That rarely happens because they also go through rigorous testing, and they rarely, if ever, do we ever see anything come out of the box and leak. And then the first repair is on them. Then the second repair winds up being, $30, $50. It's whereas if you buy an imported pair of waders, obviously you're not going to be sending that back to China to get it repaired. And a lot of the big box stores don't make waders; they don't repair waders, so you're kind of out of luck. So it's the service that you get after the sale. So 3 things: the durability, how long is it going to last, how long till it leaks, how comfortable is it going to be in fit and function, and then what kind of service you're going to get when that wader fails, which, as I told you, it's going to.
Yeah,
Jeez,
I think
that's
that's
a lot of work. Sorry.
yeah, no, well, that's important. And I think as we spoke on the phone, price point really wasn't driving, quality and customer support and back end
Yeah.
support. If you've been doing anything and you've been paying attention, it doesn't matter what you're buying, that becomes important, especially as more and more things get shipped overseas for production and distribution. So we appreciate you
Right.
sharing that, because that is, you don't find that detail on websites when you're just, shopping the
No.
product specs.
No, and that's where I think at the end of this discussion, I think you're going to find that one of the keys to this, and one of the keys to what you guys are doing with this podcast, is teaching people to seek out professionals that know this stuff. Fly fishing is a very niche, very specialized sport, and you can't just walk into a big box store and expect to get information like that. Whereas, we have amongst our staff, even the staff that's here today, we probably have 350 years of experience of fly fishing out there on the store floor. And you're not going to find that at a big box store.
True. Well, I'll tell you what, and we don't want to cut you short. If there's anything you've left out on waders, please, feel free to fill it in. But in the interest of and being respectful of your time, we want to move down the list because I got to be able to stand in or on something and wade through the river. And so the next up was boots. And
Mm-hmm.
we landed on again a middle of the road option, but maybe briefly explain. I know there's some different sole types. There's some different comfort expectations. Maybe walk us through that.
Sure. Well, once again, and I think you're going to hear me say this quite a few times through this discussion, and it kind of flies in the face of what a lot of people think that there's all these complicated differences in all this gear, and there's really not. Just like waders, I mean, waders do just a couple things. They keep you dry, they keep you comfortable, and boots do the same thing. Boots provide you with support for your feet. I mean, anytime you're hiking, um, and then especially being in the water when you've got that in stream, especially you've got that water pushing against you, you want to have good ankle support. And then, of course, it's going to be in and out of the water a lot. So you can't just go buy an oversized hiking boot at a shoe store and expect it to be a good boot for wading in the water. It has to be made by a company that makes footwear for this purpose. It has to be made from materials that are going to withstand being in and out of the water, being wet, dry, wet, dry, wet, dry. That's a lot of wear and tear on the materials. Um, so you want to look for a wading boot or a wading shoe that has good support, whether you're just hiking to the river or being in the river itself. And 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 then of course comfort. Again, back to the if you're not comfortable out there in the water, you're just not going to be having a good day. You're not going to have fun. So the wading shoes have to feel good on your foot. They have to provide you that support. They have to be able to withstand the rigors of being in and out of the water constantly. And then it's very, very important because wading in certain situations is it's pretty serious business. I mean, if something goes dramatically wrong, I mean, you could lose your life. I don't want to get too dramatic about it, but you don't want to mess around and have the wrong soles on the bottom of that boot. And I'll go ahead and tell you a little story. For years and years and years, for the first probably for the first 18 to 20 years of my career, we sold, and as a kid growing up, we sold felt soled wading shoes. That's all there was literally it's felt about yay thick. And that's all there was. And then this was started by Patagonia and by Sims and probably some sort of anti-felt lobby. Um, and we won't get into the politics of it, but they started telling us that felt could absorb invasive species and then be transferred from stream to stream or watershed to watershed. So, and again, this has been about 15, 18 years ago, maybe. And then it was great for us because then everybody threw away their felt soled shoes and had to buy these rubbers. So I sold thousands and thousands, maybe millions of dollars of rubber soled wading shoes, which at the time when they first came out were nowhere close to felt. I mean, rubber is, and we've made some great strides, but rubber is still not, in my estimation, is still not as good as felt. And when I've got a pair of wading boots on, it's almost always felt, unless I'm in a place that doesn't allow felt. For example, the state of Alaska. I think there's a few. I used to spend a lot of time in Patagonia, Chile, and Chile, they would not allow you if they scanned your luggage and they saw wading shoes in there and they saw fly rods, they knew we were fishing. They would pull your boots out and look at them, and if they were felt, they went in the trash. They would not allow felt into the country.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it was a big deal. But once people started using rubber, now I know that you bought a pair of rubber-soled shoes, but I'm going to explain why you're still okay and why we went that route. Um, for the longest time, rubber. So you had all these people running around in rubber-soled shoes and thinking maybe they thought that the rubber was better, and that was just not true. It was a lie. And then they were thinking, oh, well, we're saving the planet. I'm not transferring invasive species from one watershed to the next. Well, the truth of it is, I mean, why is felt the bad guy? Why can't those invasive species attach to the material itself, the threads that's used, the laces, the tongues of the shoes? I think felt got a really bad rap, and a lot of people were walking around and slipping and falling on their butts in rubber-soled shoes, and I think it was a bad thing for our industry. Um, but the good news is that they've really come a long, long ways. I mean, Sims, Patagonia, Orvis, for example. These are all companies that we deal with here at Mad River Outfitters. Orvis now works with Michelin, the tire company, and they've developed a sole that is close. I still prefer felt, but that Michelin sole from Orvis, and then the sole that you bought on the Sims Freestone. The Sims Freestone boots have been a stronghold in the industry for many years. It's our go-to under $200 pair of boots, and they're well made. They're very durable. You get a lot of support out of them, and that sole on there is pretty doggone good. Um, and you can always, here's how I always describe it. On land, if you're walking to the river, there's nothing better than rubber. Once you get in the water, felt becomes king, and felt is better than rubber in the water. So you kind of have to balance where you're going to spend most of your time. Do you want to be more sturdy on the trail and getting in the water, and then just be careful when you're in the stream, or do you want to just have a sole that just is all about being in the water? The other saving grace is for you, if you were to find that those were slippery at all while you're in the water, we can always add studs, and they're screw-in metal studs. They're very easy to do. We do it. We have a drill here at the shop that we can do it. They come with a little chuck. You can just screw them in, and if you add studs, then if you're fishing in very slippery, like shale bottom streams, where it's just very flat shale rock, and you get that layer of kind of slippery, scummy type stuff on it. You add those studs, and it'll dig right through that and help you grip onto rocks. You put studs into rubber, and now you have a boot that is probably as good as felt in the water, and then obviously much better than felt out of the water. So I think in the long run, I don't do as much hiking as I used to. In the long run, I kind of, if I am in a boat, I might get out and wade here and there. When I go to Montana every summer, I'm in my felt soled shoes. I just don't do as much hiking. But if I was doing what you guys are doing, I used to fish the Great Smoky Mountains a lot. And when I was hiking around in the Great Smoky Mountains, the better option for that is, in fact, the rubber soled shoes. And if you're worried about slipping while you're in the water, just add some studs and it's problem solved. So in the long run, the rubber is, in fact, probably the better option. Just realize that you're going to have to add some studs at some point if you feel you need them.
Brian, I want to thank you for bringing that up, because last fall I was on a river here in Tennessee, and I fell on my backside in a way that frankly kind of scared me.
Yeah.
And so there are some options now that I wasn't aware of before. Maybe I should reevaluate the footwear situation. So,
And there's a variety of different studs that you can buy. Some that are a little higher, a little sharper, they'll cut through a little bit better. Some that are more kind of star shaped, they sit a little bit lower, so you don't feel like you're walking on platform soles. Another thing to consider too is And then I'll tell you a little story. In fact, it was not Tennessee, but real close in North Carolina. Um, Another thing to consider is if you're going to be fishing in snow and ice, you have to have rubber and you have to have studs. Felt will literally, if you're walking around in snow and ice, that felt will literally build up a layer of ice on the bottom, and you'll feel like you're a member of Kiss, the band, for those that remember Kiss. And you feel like you're on Platform Souls because you might have this much snow and ice caked to the bottom of your boots. So you've got to have rubber, and preferably with studs if you're fishing in cold weather like we do around here for steelhead. But I had that happen too, and it's many years ago before breathable waders were even invented. I had an old pair of rubber waders, that I probably bought at whatever, some fishing store close to my house when I was a kid. And I did the same thing, man. I went. I was on the Alcana Lefty on the Cherokee Indian Reservation, right in downtown Cherokee.
Yep.
And I went in. I slipped. I went in. My waders filled up with water,
Oh,
which always wear a wading belt to help prevent that. I did not have a wading belt. My waders filled up with water. It swept me under a rock. And for this has only happened 2 times in my life, but I thought for sure that I was a goner. And my buddy that was with me, he was over on the bank, and I instantly started thinking, oh man, he's going to have to drive my truck home. He's going to have to tell my parents that I drowned in the Smoky Mountains. And this is, I mean, I literally thought that I was done for. And then somehow, miraculously, I was able to spin myself around. I guess enough water came out of my waders, and I popped up. And but that was a harrowing experience, and it's just proof. And the water was not that deep. Um, I was maybe not even up to my waist when I slipped and fell, and then it did sweep me into a hole with a big rock, and I was trapped under that rock and pinned to the bottom of the river. So it's from someone that has been in that situation, it's really scary. And you could lose your life if you're not careful. So you want to have the right gear, and you want to, again, talk to somebody that knows what they're talking about and that can sell you the right stuff for what you're doing. Which, of course, I strongly feel that we did sell you the right stuff for your weekend of fishing coming up.
all right. Yeah, I feel better. I guess that brings up a question. So, is it is it probably a good idea to have a buddy system in place if you can at all, or is that having the right gear
Sure.
kind
I
of
mean,
mitigates that?
that's always yeah, that's always the case, but it can't always be the case. I mean, I've certainly over my life gone fishing by myself a lot, um, and I think the other saving grace is in today's modern world of cell phones and a quick emergency call. Your cell phone is probably a good buddy to have along with you. Just make sure you carry it. If it's not waterproof, carry it in a waterproof bag in your vest or pouch or your pocket. Um, yeah, it's always best to be fishing with somebody if something goes awry, but that's not always possible. Not always the case in my world, and I know a lot of our folks here go fishing by themselves. So not always possible. Just make sure you have a cell phone on you, and I'll also make sure people know where you are.
Yeah, and we actually invested not long ago as we started our rank amateur endeavors in some Garmin inReaches. So when we don't have cell coverage, when we
Yeah,
get out in the mountains, we can still get a message out, or even bring in the helicopter if we need to. I guess. Um,
absolutely.
so
We use those. We use that type of stuff down in Brazil. I spent a lot of time in Brazil in the Amazon jungle. And I mean, there ain't no cell phone coverage out there and internet, nothing. So it definitely pays to have an emergency backup plan because especially down there in the Amazon jungle, there's a lot that can go wrong.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, it sounds like I've got the clothes on now and I can walk in. I've got shoes on. So, walk us through the actual rod. We can't, it's hard to catch them with your bare hands. I know you can use
Yes.
other forms of rods, but I wanted to, I really wanted the full experience. I didn't want to get out there with a spinning rod. So, we went with a fly rod, and I think we went with one that is kind of a staple with some of the classes that you guys are providing. And if somebody
Yeah.
shows up and doesn't have one, maybe walk us through that combo, benefits of getting a combo, maybe the benefits of piecing one together if you're a little more advanced,
Sure.
and not to pin you down to a brand, but maybe why we looked at some of the features on the one that we went with.
Yeah. Well, a lot of folks, I think it's very common, and I think it's probably not just in fly fishing. It probably is across almost any endeavor that somebody might pick up. Is I hear it every day that I want to try this. It's something I've always wanted to get into, but I don't want to break the bank. Okay, and that's one of the great misconceptions I think that a lot of people have had about fly fishing. And going back to our Getting Started in Fly Fishing program that we did for YouTube, um, it was one of the mysteries or the things that we tried to debunk. Is I think people have always looked at fly fishing and thought that it was such an elitist sport, and that you had to have a PhD in entomology, and that you had to be a doctor or lawyer, or you had to be rich in order to do this, and that they always thought that fly fishing gear was going to be way out of their price range. And what I've always said to folks is, if you think that fly fishing is too expensive, you're looking at the wrong website and you're shopping at the wrong place. I mean, we have fly rods and outfits for under $100. We have fly rods for $59.95 that work. They work. Is a $300 rod better? Well, it better be. If it's not, there's something dramatically wrong with the universe at that point. Um, of course, it's better, but is it going to necessarily catch you more fish? That I can't guarantee. Is it maybe it's made in the USA? Maybe it just feels a little sexier. Maybe it looks a little. Maybe it has better quality reel seat, better quality guides, and things like that. But is spending more money going to catch you more fish? Not really, to be honest with you. Is spending more money maybe going to increase your enjoyment level? Maybe. That's kind of up to you. I mean, if you like nice things, there's some situations when I fish. For example, when I just go bluegill fishing, I got a spot about 10 minutes from the shop. I'll stop by on the way home. I just pull my $60 rod out of the back of my truck and catch a few bluegill, and I enjoy it. I don't need a fancy gear. But when I go, I'll be down in Florida tarpon fishing here in a few weeks, and you better believe, I mean, we're trying to catch a 130-pound tarpon on a fly rod. You better believe I have good quality gear, especially the reel part of it, because a tarpon is going to run 300 yards and put, if I had a cheap reel, he's going to destroy that reel in about 10 seconds. So there's a time and a place for good gear, but don't ever let it prevent you from getting into the sport. So a lot of folks say, well, I'd like to get into this without breaking the bank. Well, a lot of companies offer these combo packages, which makes it very easy. I can hand you a rod, a reel, a line. The line is set up already on the reel properly, and it even comes with a leader on the end, which the leader is the monofilament connection between the fly line itself and the fly. Okay. And as you grow in the sport and you watch more of our videos, you'll find out that I'm a leader Nazi. I'm crazy about leaders. Your leader is way more important than your rod. But anyways, so the combo outfits offer an economical way for you to get into decent quality equipment. Again, rod, reel, line, everything you need. They even come in a tube that you can keep the reel on. And you just strap that to your backpack, you throw it in the back of the truck, and off you go. It's easy, it's simple. You don't have to think about much. And there's some really great ones out there on the market for in that, let's say, $199 to $299 ballpark. There's some even lesser price ones. Like I said, we do have some $100 outfits here in the shop as well. Um, uh, I prefer that you spend a little bit more money, and that's mostly not necessarily the rod, but it's the fly line itself, because the fly line is actually more important than the rod. And a lot of people don't realize that. The industry wants you to think that the rod and the reel, of course, because that's the most expensive parts. When the truth of it is, your fly is your most important piece of gear. Your leader is your second most important piece of gear, because that's what delivers the fly. And then your fly line is third most important, because if your fly line is junk, you buy a $900 fly rod and you put a junk fly line on there, you just wasted $900 on a rod. You can't make a good rod work with a piece of junk fly line. I would rather see you buy a good quality line and a cheap rod if you're trying to save bucks. So anyhow, back to the subject. You and I, and you'll find that I tend to preach a little bit, because I think my industry, the fly fishing industry, has most everything backwards. It's all wrong. Most of the information you've heard out there, or you go to shops or big box stores, they're just telling you wrong information that's not true. And a lot of places are just trying to sell you something, or they just don't know. This is what they learned somewhere along the lines from the grandfather, or they watched a bogus YouTube video. And, it's not necessarily their fault, or they're trying to sell you something. So you and I went with a combo that is probably our number one selling combo, and it's made by a company called Temple Fork Outfitters, TFO. TFO is theoretically the largest supplier of fly rods in the world. They sell more fly rods than anybody else. Back many, many years ago, in the ballpark of 25 years ago, 20 to 25 years ago, a great friend of ours, and if you watch our YouTube channel, you'll hear this name a lot. I talk about this man a lot. His name was Lefty Kreh. And Lefty was kind of the modern grandfather, or the grandfather of modern day fly fishing. Lefty passed away, unfortunately, in 2018. But Lefty felt the same way, and I got to become friends with Lefty over the years. And he felt the same way. He thought that fly fishing should be accessible for everybody, and it was not just for doctors and lawyers and kings and queens. And so Lefty helped to start the company TFO, and they made quality equipment that was designed by Lefty that people could afford. And it was really the first company that jumped in and said, hey, we're going to make good quality rods, reels, lines that cast well, that fish well, and that you don't have to take out a second mortgage on your house in order to afford. And TFO just absolutely swept the nation. And since then, they've gotten into conventional gear. They now make bait casting and spin casting rods. But they got their start in fly fishing, and partly due to Lefty Kreh and the original founder named Rick Pope, who is also a fantastic, fantastic man. Does not own the company anymore, but they still uphold that. Adhere. And they also had an unconditional lifetime warranty, and their customer service is the best in the business. Because just like with waders, I guarantee you, if I sell you waders, they're going to leak. If I sell you a fly rod, I guarantee you it's going to break. I'll put it in writing. And when that rod breaks, TFO has it set up now to where you can go to their website. And of course, as with any insurance policy, there's going to be a deductible. So you're going to pay $30 plus shipping. And when you break the tip of that rod, which is almost always what's going to break, the thinnest part, you just go pay them $30 and they send you a new tip. And you have it like in 3, 4, 5 days. You're back on the water in no time. So they really have the best warranty, the best customer service in the business. The reel that's on that, and also the castability of that rod. That rod is not a high-tech, high-performance rod that you need to have to be an expert to cast. It's what we call a medium to a medium fast action, which is going to be great for you to learn on, Ben. It has a decent fly reel. It's nothing overly fancy, but you don't need anything overly fancy when you're talking about
All right.
freshwater
Well,
fishing,
we
especially.
hope you enjoyed that. We know you enjoyed it. When it comes to expertise in fly fishing, Brian is second to none. And I tell you what strikes me is again, like I said, the passion with which he speaks about fishing. But you can tell that this really is the work of his life, and not only does he have expertise, but man, he makes you want to just jump in the car and get up in the mountains and get into the water just as fast as you can and start throwing flies. Um, but just an absolute wealth of knowledge, Ben.
Yeah, for those that have made it this far, you just witnessed the gold, and the good news is we have a second half of this interview. So please be sure to tune into the next episode because he's going to go into a little bit more depth about some other topics that obviously you're going to need to know before you go out there. But John, to your point, when a guy knows something this well, he doesn't have to in some instances be very political about it too. He's going to tell you the facts. He's going to tell you exactly what you need to know, and he's not going to apologize for it. Right? He knows what it takes to catch the fish.
Well,
So
look,
uh,
it's
go ahead.
apparent that was a zero BS conversation, right? He didn't try to make you spend more money than you needed to. Look, I mean, you're taking on a brand new hobby and starting from scratch, right? There's no doubt that, you made some investments to get here, but nevertheless, he could have talked you into a lot more by using his expertise and telling you why you needed, spend several hundred more dollars. But he didn't do that, right? He just wants you to have a good time so that you stay in the sport.
Yeah, and I think what we won't be able to capture are the multiple phone conversations that I had with him, where I can speak to that same sentiment. Right, like he had the chance and the experience to just keep running my card up, but he understood what was needed, what was not, and maybe what you'll grow into. If you find that this sport really, speaks to you, and man, you got to seek out people like this. This is what it's all about, and this is what this show is about in general.
Yeah, that's right. And again, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but you have had a chance to use this gear, and we're not going to give the report card quite yet, but you could check out our Instagram for some previews of that. But man, I tell you, you look like you knew what you were doing.
Well, I'd made a cast or two before, so I think that helped in the expedited ramp up of learning. But uh, I'll say that I was not disappointed or nor let down by the gear that I was presented, and therefore, you can't be upset about it.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's more things I could get, but let's save a little bit for later. We'll speak to maybe some of our successes or some of our tribulations on a later show. But John, as well as I do, a couple things. One, we can't give it all away right now. Two, at the end of the day, we are just here for the gear. So, with that said, John, for this week, what kind of gear are you trying to tell the people about?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's right. We are just here for the gear. So let's talk about exercise, working out a little bit. My wife stumbled upon an app that we have both used. We actually both subscribe to the premium level of this app, and it's called the Asana Rebel app. And look, I know that there are countless apps like this that's going to have a recorded workout and it's going to let you record your calorie intake or whatever. And look, I don't review these apps. I haven't downloaded a bunch of them. So I don't know that this one is better or worse than any other ones. However, I will say we have really enjoyed the Asana Rebel app, and we primarily use it for yoga. I think I mentioned a few episodes ago that both Sarah and I had been doing quite a bit of yoga lately, and this is how we're doing it. So we use it, so it has guided courses, so it'll say 30 days for this or 20 days for that, and so basically we picked a course or two, and it allows you to set goals, and so really we try and do it about really just about 3 times a week. And then for the rest of our exercise, we sprinkle in other things, a YouTube video or, just walking or a bike ride or whatever. But as for the workouts that we do on Asana Rebel, so far, we really enjoy them. They are, I guess they're different levels, and we are not advanced yoga people, but we're capable. We kind of know the gist. We know most of the standard flows and the positions and whatnot. And so, from our very, very amateur level, Asana is able to take it from there, walk us through several workouts. And I tell you, what I like about it is that, yes, I can pick a course and go through it for a month if I want, but sometimes, you don't have time for all that. You're not going to do a 25 or 30-minute yoga session in the morning, or you're sore from working out the day before. And so sometimes I'll just do like a 10-minute stretching session, and sort of, where I am at this point in my rehab. And I'm thankful to say it's, I've made a lot of advancements in the last 2 months and made a lot of progress, but sometimes, just a 10, 12-minute stretch is really kind of all I need. And it really helps. It helps my knee. It helps all of my body. And it's for those rest days when you've kind of killed it the couple of days before, and you really just need to to stretch out, let that acid move through your muscles, and take a rest day. Because what I've come to find out, when as it pertains to exercise in middle age, is that the rest days are every bit as important as the active days. And so Asana kind of accommodates both of those scenarios. So the Asana Rebel app, Sarah and I have both enjoyed it. And so what we'll do is, Sarah's been traveling a lot, and so we'll do our workout, and then it allows us, kind of to share our results with the other, kind of a la, a Strava kind of thing. But we just send each other the links for, what we did that day. And for the most part, Sarah and I are kind of on the same courses. So, if I do course 4 or course 12, it's a way for us to hold each other accountable and say, well, I got 4 and 12 done as well. So that's what we've been using it for. And, we find ourselves kind of cycling in and out of exercise routines. And so this is just the cycle we're on right now, and we've really been enjoying it. And so that is the Asana Rebel app.
Yeah, I think that's a really good find, and those that maybe listening in that might, smirk or chuckle at the fact of yoga. I can tell you that it has been creeping its way in, and rightfully so, into a lot of professional routines for professional athletes. And it's really designed to get you that strength and flexibility throughout the full range of motion, instead of, just going and like, what's your bench press, bro? Like that type of weight training. And I think, so if I'm hearing you correctly, this is not only giving you some targets, some workouts, but it's actually walking you through there. So unlike maybe like an Apple Fitness or a Strava that maybe records what you've done, this is actually helping you or guiding you through the workout as well. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. It is a full video with ridiculously fit people, ridiculously flexible people, that and a voiceover that walks you through the various poses and the various flows. So it's every single bit of it. And so basically, I set my iPad up at the end of the mat, and then I just get to it. And my performance and my grace and flexibility and strength, isn't what these video presenters are throwing up there, but I'm keeping up and enjoying it. Right? It's just a really accessible way to get a pretty robust workout in every day, or like I said, just a rest day.
Yeah, I dabbled in quite a bit of yoga myself, and what's nice about yoga, there's also what's known as modified poses. So if you're not quite the athlete of maybe, I guess, your trainer here. I'm sure they have some variations that are at your fingertips
Hey man,
for
it's
all.
your mat, it's your practice. Do it. Do it the way it makes sense for you. If you need to modify, go for it.
Namaste. Understood. Um, well, so this week for the gear on my end is not quite so spiritually enlightening. Uh, Shavasana was always my favorite part of yoga, but for me, it's going to be uh, a little more techy. It's going to be a product, right? So it's we all like listening to music to a certain degree. We all want to take that music with us, whether we're in whatever setting we're at and we're having fun. And so this week, I'm going to highlight a product from JBL. It is their Clip 4 speaker. It is a rechargeable Bluetooth speaker that, quite honestly, packs a punch for the size that you're getting and the price point. I think you can spend, just like with anything, a countless amount of dollars on getting whatever, but at a certain point, size, weight, practicality come into play. And I think this little guy, we'll call it about the size of an orange, but maybe the thickness of, maybe 2 or 3 inches thick tops. But it's got a built-in clip. It lives on my golf bag, but with an IP rating that allows it to get, I believe it's a 67. Let me just confirm here. But it has the ability to get submerged. So if you were to drop it into the water, if you were to, have some unexpected oopsies, it's gonna hold to the task. But it also puts out enough sound, puts out enough bass, more importantly, to where you're getting that full, um, let's just say, music experience. And it's something that, quite honestly, coming in at a price point, depending on where you're getting it, in the 40 high 40s to low 50s, depending on your retailer, it's not going to break the bank. And what's most impressive is, and let me see if I can pull this up, is the battery, right? So from bone dry, it'll charge in about 3 hours or less, a little under. But you're going to get 10 hours of playtime. So
Yeah.
whether you're floating the river, or you got a golf round, averaging, hopefully on pace, 4 hours or less, you can get a couple of rounds and forget to charge it, or you can get out there and really use this thing in a multitude of settings, and you're not constantly like, oh, my battery's dying. Whoop, you hear the beep, got to go charge it. So this thing's really been an eye opener for, taking music with you on the go. And it's something that, if you're looking for a Bluetooth speaker, it's a happy trade off with the capabilities and the sound, as well as the price point.
Man, so the Bluetooth speaker that we carry around is like this corporate giveaway kind of cheapy thing that Sarah got years ago. And it's okay. It's not great, but it's not so bad that, like, I've tried to go out and buy a new Bluetooth speaker, but I really am looking forward to that thing finally kicking the bucket, because there's a lot of cool Bluetooth speakers out there. This is one of them. But maybe I can accidentally drop that thing in a lake or something and end up with one of these, because it is cool. Another question, because you and I have played a lot of rounds of golf, and I don't remember you as a music on the golf course guy, but you got one clipped to your bag. Have you updated your philosophy on the jams on the golf course?
No, not really. It lives there. I know where it is because it lives there. A lot of times I play golf with people that want to listen to music. But no, where I've used this more. Matter of fact, I used this on Masters weekend when my wife and I were riding bicycles through Madison. I had it clipped on a bag, and this is where I usually use it. I clip it onto a bag, and I'm able to pipe in the Masters audio as as I'm watching it on this little screen. I don't have to succumb to just the strength and capabilities of my phone speaker. So I've used it more in settings off the golf course, but again, I got it just in case somebody can't play around without it.
Man, I tell you, golf is not a radio sport, but I guess you make exceptions for the Masters, don't you?
You got to be able to hear what's going on. More importantly, you got to hear the strike. It's just delicious, right? When they're hitting it crispy. But yeah, no, that's what we use it for mostly, and we're looking to use it more as it heats up when we start floating these rivers and getting out there in the streams.
Good stuff, man. That's a great suggestion. Like I said, maybe I can finally drop hours in the river and be done with it and end up with a clip 4. I think that's an episode, dude. Good one, and really kind of a landmark episode for our little podcast to have Brian on. We've got another helping at Brian coming, so stay tuned for that here in a week or so. But man, I know you got a lot of travel coming up, so stay safe out there. And I guess we'll see you here in a few days.
Yeah, man, that's spot on. We'll catch y'all next week.
All right. Well, you have been listening to the Rank Amateur Podcast. My name's John Kearns. Co-host is Ben Wyatt. If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach us at rankamateurpod@gmail.com. You can find photos related to these conversations on our website, rankamateurpod.com. or our Instagram account @RankAmateurPod. And of course, major thanks to the great team at Hot Passport for their support of the show. Until next time.